What's up, everyone? It's DeagleBeagle, and today we're gonna go over Empoleon. So, first thing I should show in these videos are how other people use it. So, some of this data is not true at all. So, the percentages are way off. But you can kind of still see which Terra type is the most common, I believe at least, from this, and just use proportions to kind of figure it out. That water's the most common, followed by grass, and then flying, ghost, and fairy. Right, so the most common moves, even though all these usages percentages are off, but I believe flash cannon is the most common move, followed by hydro pump, protect, ice beam, and so on. So it even gets vacuum wave. That's pretty cool. And yawn. And weather ball, I probably wouldn't use. I would use that with Pelipper, but Empoleon doesn't bring its own weather, so I highly doubt I would recommend that. It's pretty cool. It gets roost. That might be decent. You would have to keep it alive though. It has a lot of weaknesses, but if you use a Terra, maybe not. Depends. So, okay, well we could go over the items later, even though I know assault vest is very common among other defensive items. Probably most likely going to be a defensive item with it, because it's bulky and not too fast. So, I mean there could be specs and stuff, but I don't know. I kind of doubt it being that common. I think most people, well, pretty much everyone's going to use competitive, but how I would use it is probably water pledge over hydro pump, because an 80 power fully accurate move with no added effect is better than missing hydro pumps. And protect. This is the non-assault vest set. So water pledge, protect, and then flash cannon. Those seem like no-brainers to me if it's not assault vest, or even assault vest, flash cannon, and water pledge is a no-brainer. And for coverage, you would probably want either ice beam or some other move. People have used air slash, but that's weaker, and nah. Icy wind or ice beam seem pretty good with it. And yawn is an option if you have protect. Aqua jet or vacuum wave could make sense for finishing off sashes, but in general, I mean vacuum wave in general would make more sense as it's a special attacker, but Aqua jet does get stabbed and hits pretty much every Pokemon in the game unless they have something like water absorb or storm drain. So I mean, Vacuum Wave wouldn't hit like a Terraghost, Sash, Chien-Pao, but anyways, I probably wouldn't even use that anyways. I would probably use for the fourth move like Icy Wind or something, because it would give it good speed control. Well, actually, let me look at its moves, not just what people use. Grass Knot would give it some good coverage. I forget the interaction with the weight-based moves, and I think I don't think Terra affects weight-based moves. I think that's just Dynamax. So let's just take Grass Knot for example, or look up the Terra stuff. Um, yeah, I don't recall Terra stallization like stopping a weight-based move. But I know it worked like that with Dynamax before. So, I think... Let me see. Yeah, I don't think it affects anything at all. So, Grass Knot does cap versus a lot of Pokemon too, like like rapid strike. So grass knot would be good, but if you're using Empoleon, you mostly want to counter the big two intimidators and maybe some snarlers like Chi-Yu. You would want to counter that. So I can understand Terra Water, but Snarl Chi-Yu is like only on the Specs or Scarf one, like the choice one. Otherwise, you probably don't have room for it. And almost no other Pokemon run Snarl. So you should probably focus mostly on Intimidate or moves that lower stats, like Spirit Break. I'm trying to think of some others. There's not a ton of them. I mean, oh yeah, Icy Wind. It already walls that really well, so it doesn't have to worry about that. Other moves, lower stats, aren't typically used, but you could switch into, a bunch of. There's a bunch of them though. They're just rarely used, but there's Scary Face. There's Eerie Impulse. Except, I think Eerie Impulse, maybe. I don't know how it works exactly, but I think it would only. I think it might even make it neutral, or it'll just boost it by 1. So let's look up competitive, the ability, because I don't even know all this stuff. So it raises special attack by 2 stages. I would have to test. Okay, competitive activates for each stat lowered. But that's talking about multiple stats, like for example, attack and special attack. It should have in here what it does for when your attack or special attack is harshly lowered, especially special attack, since that's what competitive lowers. So I would have to test that out. But Eerie Impulse is not used that much anyways, only like Thundurus and a few other Pokemon might use it, but that's pretty rare. So I would probably use this. Maybe Vacuum Wave if I wanted priority, and maybe Yawn to give it something to do in case it doesn't get the boost. But Icy Wind still does something if it doesn't get the boost. So I'd probably go with Icy Wind, because getting the speed control is just really nice. Having a spread move and hitting everything if it hits, it's just, I think Icy Wind is what I'd go with. But most other I mean, you could use Ice Beam. Yeah, Ice Beam, there's nothing wrong with Ice Beam. It would do more to like Rillaboom and whatnot. But unless you super affect something with Ice Beam, I guess you could say the same thing for Icy Wind, huh? But Icy Wind hits both opponents, so even if it does about the same net damage as Ice Beam, unless you're trying to hit one target really hard with Ice Beam. There is, let's just look really quick at some of the Pokemon. I know Rillaboom off the top of my head. Tornadus, sure. Landorus, you could hit harder with it. A lot of them are Scarf anyways. So you could kill them with a Water Pledge. I suppose if they're Terra Flying, you might want Ice Beam. Let's look it up though, for the sake of argument. And let's just pretend it's max special attack. So you have Icy Wind, you have Ice Beam, and Water Pledge. Not all in the same set, but just comparing them. Now, Water Pledge, even without the Intimidate, would one-shot Landorus. So, without the competitive boost. So, let me just take this off here, just to really 100% confirm that. Yeah, even without some boosting item. So, Icy Wind actually does less than Water Pledge, but that's, yeah, never mind. It wasn't even Terra Flying. And So Ice Beam does, of course, more because it's 4 times weak, even though it doesn't have stab. But let's say you're Terraflying, they're Terraflying. It looks like even with the +2, Icy Wind would not one-shot. Water Pledge most likely would, even if they're Terraflying. And Ice Beam would for sure one-shot. But let's go over some other Pokemon. There's Tornadus. If Bleak Wind Storm lowers your speed, then it's going to get whammed with Ice Beam. Icy Wind would nearly one-shot it and hit its ally. So it depends on what you're looking for. And Water Pledge would one-shot, so unless they have max HP, some HP. So the utility of Icy Wind lowering speed seems really useful for me, and hitting 2 targets. And hitting through Rage Powder and whatnot too. Redirection, follow me stuff. So, you take your pick. And what else? There's a lot of grass Pokemon now, or Pokemon that are weak to ice. I mean, there always was. But just there's been some grass Pokemon added, but I suppose they don't really count that much besides the regular Ogre because they're never gonna. Well, actually, the rock one too is weak to ice, but it will have sturdy a lot of the time unless it Terra stalls. Ice Beam would be good versus a Moongus, and I mean just anything that's weak to ice. Roaring Moon. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Ice Beam. It might even be better than Icy Wind. It really depends on the team, how you want to use Empoleon, but I would personally, you could use water, but I probably wouldn't. I would probably use water would counter the Intimidators better, but I don't know. It doesn't resist that much that you're weak to. I mean, you do take neutral from most of what you're weak to. Like, it's weak to electric, not grass. It's weak to fighting, ground, electric. Am I missing something? Not fire because it's part. So 3 things, I think. Fighting, ground, and electric. So if you give it Terra water, it's still weak to electric, and it doesn't even resist ground or fighting. Personally, I'd give it something that either takes neutral or resists fighting, because fighting is pretty common. You don't want to let Urshifu or Drain Punch Hands or Sacred Sword Chien-Pao to be able to just hit you really hard. The other thing too is, well, I guess Chi-Yu might not be the biggest concern with Empoleon, but it would be nice to not be weak to Chi-Yu. You could, I mean, Terra Grass is fine on Empoleon, but like it does take neutral from fighting and resists electric, and it does pretty well against hands. So yeah, maybe grass is better and it's immune to spore. I just have some I don't know, concerns about it. Like, flying gives you a total immunity to Stomping Tantrum, but maybe sometimes you don't want that. Maybe you want to bait out, the fact that they can still hit neutral, so they still go for Stomping Tantrum instead of selecting some other move to try to predict your Terror type more. So there's that. And the thing, if you use Terra Flying, however, you're still weak to hands and other electric moves, even though hands is one of the only electric common mons used. So Terra Flying might be fine. But actually, I think Terra Grass is probably, like, pretty good with it, because you want something to counter, like, what people are using, like Landorus. However, if you use Terra Grass, then you're going to be neutral to Flare Blitz from Arcanine no matter what. And they could close combat you if you don't Terra Stall with Choice Band, and then Flare Blitz you if you Terra like Grass. So you're kind of stuck in a pickle versus Arcanine. So yeah, actually, it's hard to pick a Terra type, but you want something that counters what it's weak to. So not poison, because that does counter. Actually, let's look at the typing chart. I believe bug would be pretty good on it. Because it resists. I totally forgot about bug, because I didn't see it on the list. So Empoleon is, remember, weak to ground, it's weak to fighting, and it's weak to electric. So what resists fighting and ground? Bug resists fighting and ground. Is there anything else that resists both fighting and ground? I don't think so, guys. So yeah, bug actually sounds like it's the best with it. Even though, yeah, you are weak to Chi-Yu, but that's not your primary concern. Your primary concern is beating Landorus and Arcanine. So, that's what you're using this for. Now, it can have allies or some really unique moveset. And keep in mind, Bug would be vulnerable if they predict that with Terra Flying Blast Landorus. But at least you have something versus Stomping Tantrum. If you're really worried about them trying to hit your Terra type for super effectiveness, you could probably just use like Terra Water besides Wild Charge from Hands, and that would take neutral from almost everything. But actually, in the Ogre metagame that we live in now, there's so many grass types that you probably wouldn't want. I mean, Terra Fire's still good. Terra Water's still really good. It's just, I would have second thoughts about it. So, with the EV spread though, it's up to you. But you could use something like this. And, let's see. As far as the item goes, I don't know if I agree with Assault Vest, by the way, because it doesn't help at all versus physical attacks, and all the intimidators that are common are physical. You probably could use like Citrus or whatever and help on the special and physical side. That would probably be really good. Or you could even just max the speed and give it Sash, but I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably use it to switch in, resist something, and not just use it to try to counter Intimidate, because let's say they don't pick it to Intimidate, it has to do something, even if they don't pick Intimidate. So that, I don't know. Item, I would probably recommend Citrus. But then let's go over the Assault Vest set. Pretty straightforward. So, by the way, when I say bug, I mean you can use different Terra types with it. We already went over what they are, and you can look it up on Pikalytics if you're unsure of what you could use. I don't think I'd use Ghost or maybe Fairy. That would help versus Single Strike, but probably not. Probably just use like Bug, because that resists two things, even though they could possibly predict that Rock Slide or Terra Blast. But let's just, we already kind of talked about that. And, okay, Icy Wind, or actually, on the Assault Vest one, since you don't have Protect, I'd probably be more willing to use like a priority move like Vacuum Wave, but where is it? Yeah, because you'd have pretty low attack. However, Vacuum Wave, yeah, Vacuum Wave is only 40 power and doesn't hit everything, but it is a priority move, and you could use Icy Wind and Ice Beam, but I probably wouldn't. You could even, if you don't like Vacuum Wave, you could even use Grass Knot on this thing, and it would give it better coverage. So you could use like Grass Knot. That's fine. By the way, on the on the other set, you could use a move like Helping Hand, but I think Icy Wind would just be really good if you get the boost, and it's good outside of it too. While Helping Hand, if you get the boost, it's like partially wasted, unlike Icy Wind.